Happy Friday, guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Dubs. I'm your host, Bill T. Well, looking like I'm not going to make it to Kelly Park this weekend. Had some stuff come up, and so I'm not feeling 100%, and George was busy, so excuse. I'm not coming up to Kelly Park unless something miraculously changes from the time I put this podcast out to later this afternoon. But looks like I'm going to be here camping out in Vegas for the weekend. And if you're going to be up in the Northern California area, make sure you guys go check out the Red Barn Swap Meet on Saturday, Mark Merrill's place this evening, and Kelly Park on Saturday, put on by the Golden Gate chapter of the Vintage Volkswagen Club of America. It's always a killer event. There's always just so much cool stuff going on and a lot of cool cars. Bombing out that I don't get to see my NorCal homies, but who knows, man. Next time, maybe a Bug-A-Ram, I'll be there. But I definitely got to get up there and see my peeps. Man, just plugging away down here. Make sure that you guys are focused on what I was going to be doing up there, which is putting out flyers to promote the event for October's One Crazy Weekend. So make sure you guys book your rooms. Do not wait, guys. I'm going to tell you this again and again. Book your rooms. Book them. Make sure they're booked 30 days before the event because they've opened up a huge block of rooms for us. Last time they ran out of rooms because people were trying to book them too late toward the event time, and they really need to be booked right now. So book your rooms for the event, even if you're on the fence about going. This way, at least you can hook up somebody with the room that's already booked for you in case, so that the room's are reserved so nobody's out of luck. So if you guys do book a room and you end up not going, make sure that you call someone a couple days in advance because there will be people looking for rooms. Matter of fact, the easiest thing to do is hit me up and say, hey, I got a room reservation code. I'm not going to be able to make it. And then I'll put it on the podcast, put out a special bulletin alert, get somebody that code. They'll lock up that room. And then VW people get to stay at the Orleans Hotel and Casino. It's going to be a rager this year. That I guarantee. Other than that, make sure you guys support our sponsors. You like what you hear on Let's Talk Dubs, man. Go subscribe to VW Trends Magazine. They got the new issue out today where they go to Japan. Pretty dope split window on the cover of the magazine this month. Lots of cool stuff in that magazine. So make sure you go to VWTrendsMagazine.com to subscribe. VW Trends Magazine to subscribe. Don't forget to follow Dan Ledbetter on his Instagram and Facebook. He's traveling all around the country right now. And if you connect with Dan, you may win yourself a lifetime subscription to VW Trends Magazine. So go check him out at VWTrendsMagazine.com. Now, also, Ross Wolf, just this last weekend, you saw him on Instagram, was over at Georgia's shop, and we dialed in our shifter, upgraded my shift bushings to the Ross Wolf shift, the billet shift bushings. So those are dialed in, got my shift together. And they got plenty of cool stuff for you guys. Make sure you guys check out their stainless steel bus deck lid hinges. If you got raggedy hinges on your bus, dude, get them dialed in today. Go to Ross Wolf and check out their billet stainless deck lid hinges. They'll last a lifetime. They're ready to paint. Polish them up however you want them. Go get them at rosswolf.com. Also, another cool thing that they have, that if you got your leaky bug, you want to get your Viton gasket and your billet sump plate cover. Get that dialed in by Ross Wolf, a reusable Viton gasket on your sump. So cool stuff that you guys can pick up because Ross Wolf, purveyors of speed and style, they're all about bringing cutting edge stuff to the VW community. So go check them out at rosswolf.com, and don't just take my word for it. Look at the reviews that are on their website. They're really focused on customer feedback, and they stand behind everything that they do. So check them out at rosswolf.com. Now, a couple shout outs today. So first shout out is going to go to Meyer943. Says, well, I've been out of the VW game for about 25 years and got back in about a year ago, working on a 66 Beetle Frankenstein, and he's hoping to head out to One Crazy Weekend. All the podcasts have been great. I'm trying to get through all of them now. Keep up the outstanding work. P.S. I'm from Bakersfield. And you're right. Some very cool cars have come out of some very talented builders here. Legit podcast. Love it. So we're looking forward to seeing my guy Meyer. Looking forward to seeing Frankenstein the Bug out here for One Crazy Weekend, man. So get to work, bro. Turn them wrenches and get that dude down here. I'm hoping to have Bull Run Bus in its all her new glory debuted at the One Crazy Weekend. So laying on the ground and looking legit. So I'm looking forward to, I got so many irons in the fire, guys. We can't even talk. We're gonna have to do a round table and talk about all the crap I got going on, because I got a lot of car junk going on right now. So probably do a round table coming up here in the next few episodes with we'll get old Uncle George in here and we'll do a little podcast with him. Today's podcast is a continuation of the podcast that we were doing in the UK. The UK invasion. Let's Talk Dubs invades the UK, and we rolled into the Volksworld show. So make sure you guys support Volksworld by subscribing to Volksworld magazine today. They do a lot of really rad features. Their magazine is hefty, a lot of content in there, and it really kind of ups the game, man. Pushes you guys to do what you need to do, see what's out there, get a different take from across the pond there. Those guys do things a little different and maybe give you some inspiration, but check it out. Go to volksworld.com and subscribe today. And those guys treated me right when I got there. Got rolled up like royalty, and got a little nice space upstairs, a VIP box where I did my podcast. And that's where we recorded today's podcast. And today's podcast is the guy that's doing big things, air suspension up there in the UK, is Limebug. He's the one everybody knows about. We sat down with Craig Shaw. He's the founder of Limebug. Him and his significant other have kicked off that business, and he's got a great story. Matter of fact, the name Limebug comes from her bug. She had a bug, and he was into water pumpers, and he was like, let me hook up the bug. And so goes the story. And now Limebug is producing a lot of product for air suspension up there in the UK. Craig's a good dude, got a great story, and we're about to get into that. So let's do it. Let's talk about air suspension, fabrication, modification, air shocks. Do they work? Do they not work? Are these airbags? Are they shocks? Are they airbag shock? We're going to find out right now with Craig Shaw from Limebug on Let's Talk Dubs.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen. It's got everything that people who like the bug like.
Okay, everybody. So on today's podcast, we're back again. Another episode from Volksworld 2023, the British invasion. And I've got on today's podcast, I'm sure you guys have been familiar with their front suspension, rear suspension, all the air stuff they do, and the custom machine wheels they do. I've got Craig Shaw with Limebug on the podcast today. Craig, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Hey, so the way that we always start the podcast is obviously Limebug does a lot of super cool, parts for VW air suspension, the custom machined wheels, and a lot of bits and pieces for your Slam Volkswagen. But the way we always start the podcast is, what's your VW story and how did you get into Volkswagens?
So originally, to get into the air-cooled world, it was a transition from, I had a VW Polo, a G40, which is a little supercharged 90s hot hatch, and my partner I met at the time, Leanne, who's downstairs, she's got a lime green Beetle, which is where the name actually originated, and that's what we started working on together. It was a project on the driveway, and that car sort of went through many stages and transitions of going through the different styling. At the time, it was a Paris conversion, which I'm not sure whether they have in the States, but it's basically a convertible, but a home-done convertible,
right?
Where they saw the roof off, and
so we call it a Carson top in Vegas. In the States, it's a hard top that comes on and off the car.
Kind of, yeah. So it sort of folds back, but you can remove it fully. So it becomes like. So it's
a homemade convertible, is what it is.
Yeah, it was. But at the time, that was what we had, and we rebuilt the car many times over, and it's sort of always been a passion. I've done engineering and manufacturing in like previous jobs before doing Limebug, and it was always kind of the thing we wanted to do was do the axles, the suspension. The air ride thing sort of evolved over a period of time, but the suspension was always something we thought we could try and work on and improve. But it always started from the foundations of building that one car on the driveway, and that then became my car, which is actually downstairs today. My car I've had 13 years. This is its debut.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's here today. It's really kind of cool, but it was $200 at the time when I bought the car. And I don't think there's one original panel left on it, but as they all are in the UK, every car is peppered from every which way. That car's that's here today, so it's quite nice.
They're rusted for the bottom half of the car.
It's always the bottom foot and a half is all gone. But it was nice because you could kind of like do. when that car, we started building it, the one that's here.
What year is it?
It's actually a 70, but it's had all the nice like sloping wings and everything on it. But it was just, at the time, we just buy the thing that you liked and just kept adding stuff. So it was never meant to be a purist thing from front to back. It was just what I wanted at the time, and it's just been added to. I was just in a weekend or an hour here and there, and it's taken 13 years to do.
Yeah, that's quite a well. And you seem fairly young. I mean, to me, I'm an old man. I'm 50, and you're in your 30s, right? So,
yeah.
It struck me when I met you that you're a little bit on the young side. But one of the questions that I have is, coming from the background, having a Polo, in that whole water pumper scene, air suspension is like the only way.
Yes.
Yeah. And is that where the origins of air come from for you? Because like you kind of get pushed into the air cooled scene because obviously everything in our life is driven by women. So we kind of get into the air cooled thing, and then you're like, these guys are archaic with their lame suspension. Let's do some air over here.
Correct. Yeah. So the water cooled scene, quite rightly, there's always been coilovers, get it as low as possible, and then overnight the air ride thing sort of happened with the water cooled scene, and everybody was sort of bored of smashing. Everybody's sumps were getting blown off the cars and just doing horrific damage underneath, ripping brake lines, and everybody just went for the air, and that kind of stuck. And then gradually this became a thing that the air cooled community started to jump more and more on. But there's never really been a straight bolt-on solution. Air cooleds are quite tricky just purely because the torsion bars.
Right.
You can't just take a strut, put a strut back in, or a shot and put a shot straight back in its place. There's a lot of things to kind of work around. All the year differences you've got as well. So that became sort of the long haul of trying to unengineer and re-engineer the air cooled platform to try and make it work more like a. Yeah.
Now, when you so obviously you get into the air cooled scene because of your girlfriend, because your partner, and now you're like, okay, let's see what the first thing we all typically do. Let's go to a catalog online, see what we got, right? We'll check out some websites and see what's out there. Who did you see on the market at the time?
You've got initially there was probably sort of the MP, the Bug Pack, I think at the time, Scat. It's all the places that are in the sort of States, and we're looking at all like the Cal-Lux stuff as well. There's a big sort of drag racing scene over here. But a lot of the stuff was sort of homemade as well at the time. Like drop spindles were just sort of becoming the norm when we first started. Narrow beams were still very much the thing. Was you cut the beam that you've got and welding and adjusters. So that was kind of how we started off with all that, and then gradually it sort of became more and more becoming a complete unit from new, rather than just adapting and cutting and welding. Everybody, it's better for everyone to have that just bolt-on simplicity to add it to the car. You get the instant looks, you get the lows, and you get the usability. But from the initial days, it was all the sort of places in California, Moon Eyes as well. Mm-hmm. I've got quite a sort of big history with the VW stuff, with the Speedmasters. They've got the place over in Japan with all the crazy Pegal stuff over there. But that was where we started. So we started importing quite a few bits from there. We got.
And you were doing this originally just for a hobby.
It was a hobby that spiraled. Yeah. It started off basically just trying to repair the line bug initially and sort of cover the costs. So we'd maybe buy in 3 or 4 mirrors or intake manifolds, exhausts, something that we needed for Leanne's Beetle at the time, and we would ship them in, and then we just put them on eBay, or I don't think Facebook was even that big a thing at the time, but we just sort of sell the other ones to cover the cost of that one, and then more and more people would be like, they start getting, hey, we're getting stung by the import duties. We're buying this one $10 thing and it's costing me $50 on import. And then we get more, and then friends and so on. And then that sort of started to build. And then it became, the suspension was just always, I think it's always a passion, because the engineering is what I've done from university, and before I've always been tinkering, making things. But that sort of became the passion, and the interest became the sort of drivetrain, and how can we try and make this better and simpler. And there was things that out there, but nothing that really did like a front to back solution. There was just little bits that would sort of fix little areas of it, but it never really you couldn't seem to get anything in sort of one box that would put everything back kind of right.
Yeah,
straight out
nobody
of the
made
box.
just a kit. Like, here's your air solution for your
In a
Volkswagen.
box. There you go. It's in a crate.
And what's the first product that you guys develop on your own?
So the first, what was the first thing? So I mean, this first stuff was probably quite simple and basic because with the limited tools at the time, it's probably things like track rods and just threading a bar and then figuring out how to do the machining, doing the little flats for where the spanner, you lock it and tighten up, and then things sort of evolved from there. And we've got like an old broacher. It's actually from before the war. The broaching machine we've got, which pulls all the splines now. So we've got our own broacher press brake welders, and literally the entire part comes in as a raw material now and goes out as a finished product. But the spring plates are quite a nice one because that uses almost every machine in the shop. So it's
So
quite
your spring plates are made 100%
100%
in
yeah.
the UK from you.
Yeah, in one building. I mean, the only exception to that is that the laser cutter is, I think, 100 yards away from
How do you find a broacher from a pre-war broacher?
It took a lot of finding, that did, and it took a lot of digging out, and because the guy had it sort of buried behind pallets, and it's got, I don't even know what, it came with a big pallet of broaches that are something to do with, I think, propellers off a submarine or something. Yeah, so there's some crazy things that came with it. But yeah, it was just, you just keep searching for brooches. But brooches are such a strange and rare thing. People make homemade ones, but this one is from the 1890, I think.
So on the broaching machine, you can set it for the
splines,
design, whatever splines you want. You set the machine up and it'll do it automatically.
So it pulls. It's basically like a huge long rod, and the splines sort of grow along it. So if you imagine the serrations, there's maybe 70 serrations, and by the time it gets to the last one, it's the full size spline.
So it just presses it through?
Yeah, it just keeps dragging it through. So it's like a really high torque motor that just drags this bar through, and then you just cake it in cutting fluid and cutting compound, and it just pulls that. So it starts a round, smooth round bar, pulls it through, and then you have the finished broach to go on the
So
spline.
you end up you're making the spring plates complete on your own.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really something. Swayways been doing it for a long time. A lot of people have been doing the spring plate, but you've thought, if I can make it here, I avoid the import tax, like all the importing fees, the delays, and then I can control the quality. Because your background, you said, is in machining?
It's engineering.
Engineering?
Yeah, so I worked before the Volkswagen, I worked as a robot maintenance engineer at General Motors in the UK as Vauxhall. So I maintained robots on the production line. So there's a lot of, it's problem solving in a similar way. We'd have things where you'd have to design a jig or something to lift a fuel tank up under a car, or we had problems with glazing cells to smash windows and they couldn't see the edge of the screen. So it's like problem solving really, but always on cars. So, and then it's sort of, in the end, then it sort of just rolled into this sort of the air-cooled VW thing naturally, and that then became I could do this, and then a couple of people buy a thing, and you think, maybe I could do this, and then that's like bringing right up to date now. We've got like started doing the extended arms that are cast from one piece, so the Ultra Arm. That's like one of our newest things we started doing. And that's for 4-inch narrow beams. One of the other things that everybody complains about with the narrow beams is the lock, the steering lock.
It changes because you rotate the direction of the
track rods.
Track rods.
Yeah.
It changes now the geometry of the front steering.
Exactly. Yeah. And you normally end up with like one lock is kind of okay, and then the other one will be really quite restricted.
Yeah.
And that's always been a problem. And there's been a few bolt-on solutions where you sort of drill out the ends and put like a little extension on, but none of it ever really rectified the problem fully, or it'd make the steering really fast and quite scary.
Yeah.
So we made this arm, and it was a huge headache to make, but that's now it's a company who makes stuff for military again, but like they make parts for tanks. So that's actually the material it's made of is the same material you make a drive shaft from, so it's incredibly strong.
So it's an extended pitman arm, is that what it is?
Exactly, but it's sort of extended,
and it's offset.
Yeah, Yeah.
So you have to change the geometry of the offset to correct the steering from narrowing the front suspension.
Exactly.
Which it's so funny because as archaic as Volkswagens are,
Yeah.
the suspension being in version 1.0 of engineering is like you have to get really creative with air suspension. I mean, ultimately the best thing to do would be A-arm suspension, right? But
but it's incredibly tricky to get the A-arms
to fit inside the front horse head. Yeah,
exactly.
There's just no room. There's no room compounded. And thinking with Volkswagen, they really maximize the space.
Yeah.
And with a car not having a frame.
And you've got that tunnel to like contend with as well for your putting a rack and pinion. If you go for a beach buggy and where there's a rail and there's a lot more room, that works, and you've got the extended arms and you've got a lot more space to get something like that to fit. But everybody wants the narrowed beams to get the wheels to torque and be able to get the car low. A couple of A-frame systems out there were always a little bit hindered by the fact that tires would scrub the arch, and that was always the downside. So we've worked within like the VW platform and made the parts, adapted the parts to actually work with the 4-inch narrowed and the air suspension thing as well.
So are you doing lengthened trailing arms now too?
So we do
because that's the other thing that they do is lengthen the trailing arm to recenter the wheel.
Yeah. So there's a guy you probably know, Chase.
Yeah, Chase Hill, Cage 66. He's been on the podcast.
Yeah. He's a great guy. He's we talking with him at the minute, and we're working on because he's the guy who does the
lengthened trailing arm.
Yeah, and we've got some drawings together, and we're just trying to figure out a way of getting these arms to like 100% new manufacture between the two of us. But it's a bit of a.
I mean, that's a big deal. I mean, because you're looking at manufacturing something for a market that it's a lot of money to invest.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you're thinking like, okay, well, is it going to sell? And then you've got difference between ball joint and link pin arms, right?
Yeah. And then you've got to contend with an air shock. The diameter is bigger as well. And then, there's differences of people, different beams from different guys. So you've got the shock can be a variety of different places. The relocator changes things and the position of the lower arm, because if you've got a much narrower beam, the shock's got to run at a more cranked angle as well. So we've got to try and account for as many of those things as we can, and right-hand drive and left-hand drive as well for the UK and obviously everywhere else market.
The rest of the world.
Yeah.
And so how was it when you started designing your first parts and pieces? What are some of the struggles that you came across? I mean, did you get accepted right away into the scene? Like, yep, this is great. He's the man. Let's use his parts. Hip, hip, hooray. Here comes Craig. Like, I mean, what's that been like? Thinking, because you're coming kind of from the outside world of the water-cooled into the air-cooled, thinking, you know what? These guys have been living in the dark ages. Let me help them out. Let me bring some air suspension to the game and make it locally.
Yeah.
And then, and you maybe have a little bit of advantage because you can look online and see who's doing what at the time.
Yeah.
Get some inspiration from that, and then think with your brain, maybe I could do that differently.
Yeah, I could tweak that. Yeah.
How do you feel you were received into the VW community?
I mean, I think not quite open arms, but I think everything's sort of earned, and I think over a period, gradually it's sort of become accepted. Our stuff's a little bit out there in some of the the wheel designs with the gold wheels, and
I love it. I think it's I am into different. I'm so worn out on the same 3 sets of wheels everybody uses, and all. I mean it's a constant. That's kind of the thing in our game, right?
Yeah.
And when you look at the water cooled world, they're using 3-piece. They're using Ferrari wheels. They're using everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's kind of like it's funny because the Volkswagen world is like the punk rock scene.
Yeah.
That's not punk. This is punk. That's not punk. It's got to be this or that. You're in or you're out. And when you try to push the boundaries a little bit outside, sometimes you get some pushback.
You can meet a little resistance, but I think overall, generally very warmly received. Once it was there, I think it's the initial uncertainty of this thing turns up, and then everybody thinking everybody's now going to put these huge wheels, these billet things on every car, and the whole culture and the Cal look thing, and all these different stages that air-cooled VWs have been through, and there's so many different thoughts, whether it be the Ratlook, the patina stuff, the sort of full hot rod custom. You got the rails, the sort of no fender stuff, the Bahas, the Manx. You got so many different things.
There's a lot of variety in the scene.
And I think people thought maybe this is going to come in and ruin it a little bit, but it's just another thing. It's another feather to the quiver kind of thing.
This is how I see it, right? I think that I've always been a different guy. I've been running 17s on my car since 2002.
Yeah.
My first bus I debuted, I put 17-inch twists on it, and I think a 17-inch wheel diameter fits perfectly in a Volkswagen wheel arc.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Exactly, yeah.
And with, you go to the Pirelli +1 philosophy of as you increase, you decrease. Instead of just slapping low profile tires and your speedometer's off, you increase the wheel size, decrease the tire diameter. It's a perfect fit for me. The limitation has always been, okay, what can you get in a Porsche lug pattern? And then it's not even that. What can you get? Because now if you go small hub, small lug pattern, you can do really custom drill any lug pattern.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, what can you get that looks like it will look cool on a Volkswagen? Because a Volkswagen has such a specific shape.
Yeah.
Not every wheel looks good on it.
Yeah.
And I think when you go out on a limb like this and machine a wheel, that's a bold move because at first it's not cheap.
Yeah.
And second,
it could be horrible.
It could be a disaster. I mean, because that's the thing. Like everything looks good on paper, right?
Yeah.
And then but I think these gold wheels on the split just killed it. I mean, I think it's just such a. I love that look, man, and I love a staggered offset. I love.
And it's the zero lip on there as well. That was a little bit of from the water cooled thing that was pulled in. The zero lip is just something that you don't. It's kind of done in the air cooled world, but they may not have fully realized because like the Fouche with the 4.5 always has the
D6.
Yeah, always the protruding.
The king crab.
Yeah, the king crab. That's it. So it's kind of there, but then we've sort of pulled that together with a billet custom as well. But it just looks so fun. Like when you look down the side profile of the car.
Yeah, and I
it's sticking out. It's just.
And I think the I want to say Euro look because that's what we call it in the States is like the Euro look when we refer to like. It's funny because as European as the VW air-cooled is, it's a different breed all to itself. You know what I mean? Yeah. And putting some of that Euro look with the Volkswagens, it's kind of different. But one of my bugs that I built back in '93 was a Resto custom with a touch of German look. Like I had phone dials. I think you guys call them teledials here.
Yeah.
So I had phone dials, 16 7s in the back, 15 6s in the front.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, you either loved it or hated it. And me, I loved it. Yeah. And I think I don't know how that wheel's received here.
Yeah.
In the States, it's a love it or hate it. You either like a phone dial or you hate it, but it has, for me, when I did it back then, it was all about like I wanted a different set of wheels. Yeah. I wanted something that was cool.
It's having the like identity of the car, isn't it? It's
Correct.
Making it something different. You want to roll in and be like it's my thing, it's my style. Yeah, this one you just have up on the screen. This is a one we've just done.
So the notch back here.
Yeah, this is a good friend who's local. And we made like a spun aluminium center for the for like the wheel adapters.
So it's the same wheel that you make like a smoothie style billet wheel. Is that what that is?
Kind of, yeah. So it's like a sort of lightweight sort of styled wheel. So like more like a drag race themed wheel, but done as a split again. So it's got the tuner lugs on it, and then it's got the sort of spun center, which is a little bit reminiscent of like the sort of cast drums type look going on, but it gives it like a mini dome hubcap that isn't the full VW big baby moon style thing.
And it's a different look. I mean, I think it's a cool look.
Yeah, it's a bit like it sort of looks like an old oval racer type.
Yeah, like a
style.
salt flat disc in the center.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you've gotten into, so you do a full air suspension, full front and rear air.
For all, so every car model we cover now, so Type 3, Razor, all the variant, they've got the squares notch and the...
Did you see the blue Type 34 out here yesterday?
Yeah, with the gold wheels.
Yeah.
That's on ours as well.
That car is gangster.
It's
like
cool,
that car is... I have the same car sitting on the rack in my garage, and I'm doing different wheels on it, and I was a little upset about his wheels. I was really upset about his wheels. And when I say upset, like upset that it motivated me that that's it. It's just raised the bar, and now I'm coming even harder. You know what I mean?
It's the blue one, isn't it?
Yeah, gangster, bro. I love that car. And that car's sitting on your air suspension.
Yeah.
And so what is the air suspension? So are you doing Type 1 beam conversion onto the Type 3? Like what are you doing?
So our Type 3 conversion is, it's a Type 1 66 on ball joint Beetle front end you convert with. So you use a donor from a ball joint Beetle, and then it's a ball joint front end that it adapts onto. So we've basically played with the caster with the Type 3 beam.
Right.
So we have 3 settings on our Type 3. So we have like a Cal look setting, if you like, so with a high rear end, so it dials the caster into the beam if you're running a lot of nose down, and then if you're running more flat, you can rotate the beam forward, which then basically allows the beam, because the limit's the ball joint as well for your like low point.
Right.
But by rotating the beam forward, it allows the car to go lower if you're running the car more flat. But equally, you don't have to compromise your steering if you've got the back end high and are running a big wide oval or something on the back of it. You can still have good drivability on the car.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another Razor. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. The Razors are probably the nicest Volkswagen ever. I mean, listen.
I want to disagree.
I had the gray one that was in Volksworld on Cosmics. It was back in 2009.
Yeah.
And it was featured in the old sign graveyard in Vegas.
Yeah.
But that car was static. As a matter of fact, it had QA1 shocks on it all the way around.
Yeah.
The new one that I'm doing, I've got. It's still going to be static, and I've got some Kleeblatt wheels going on it, color matched. And now that I saw his wheels out here, did you make those wheels for him?
No, he did them. I don't know where those got done, but yeah, they look really, really good.
So what now I'm looking at my Kleeblatts thinking, well, those are going to the machine shop and cutting the hub out, and I'm going to have to make a 17-inch Kleeblatt.
Now you got to make splits now.
Something. I've got to do it when the bar gets raised, but that's what I love about the hobby, right?
Yeah.
Instead of getting mad and jealous, I get mad and inspired. Like, oh, now I got to come correct. Like, I got to go back to the drawing board.
That's what you want. You want to see these cars that make you think, I can do this another way now.
And I think people that can see something that just one-up them and then use it to motivate. I think that's what makes the scene healthy and drives people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With your suspension for the Type 3. Now, so my issue with air that I've never had an air system. So I have to full disclosure, never had an air system. And it's always been maybe the reluctance of, if I drop a car static and it's low enough, but it's not on the ground. I mean, obviously on the ground, everything looks better, right?
Yeah.
But I'll put them as low as I can get them where they can still drive good, where I'm not on the brakes all the time going through intersections. And obviously our streets aren't as bad as the streets here.
Yeah.
Because we don't get near as much rain.
Yeah.
But, I've never done air on a setup, and it's always been the reluctance of, I kind of think on a Type 3, going to a Type 1 beam is like going backwards engineering-wise as far as spring rate, suspension, all that stuff. Of course, I'm not an engineer, and I don't know the calcs and the resistance and all that stuff of any of that. My particular Type 34, I've got narrowed front arms from Russell.
Yeah.
So he narrows the front trailing arms to bring them in a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think the air setup looks good on that Type 3. What's a complete setup run for that Type 3 like that?
With the beam and everything, do the narrowing, the whole thing. I think they at the minute about £3,500.
Okay, so about $4,000 US.
Yeah,
probably
somewhere around that. Yeah. I mean, talking about the setup with the suspension and getting it kind of to work right. That was a lot of the headache was with the front shocks to get them to work properly. So
now you're talking about you have a shock looks like a bag over shock type thing.
Correct. Yeah.
Now what's the story on that shock?
So the gold tops, which are the sort of nickname for the whole range of the front shocks that we do. Evolved from the Hijacker, the Monroe, the shock that you've probably seen a lot of, the black painted steel bodied shock, and they sort of worked, and it was one of them where they were good for a time, but they struggled with sort of a couple of things to do with getting consistent ride heights, and
usually those Hijackers are all they are is just compressed air. So you eliminate suspension. You
Yeah.
no longer have. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just stiffer. The higher you raise the car, the stiffer it rides. The less suspension you have.
And the other old way was they'd leave the torsion bars in, so you end up with two suspensions sort of fighting each other.
Right,
Was
right.
those shocks were used as load levelers mainly on the rear for you towing a big, you got a fifth wheel or something on there, and you're trying to level the bed on the truck, and you'd have those shocks lift it up and it would get everything flat again. But they sort of work on a Beetle purely because the weight was so light. But then when you get to the Razors and the Type 3s and you've got a bit more weight in the nose, things got tricky, which was it sort of was something always needed to be done, was design this shock that sort of, it's based on more of a strut than it is an air shock now.
So is that shock 100% you?
Yes.
Like you have it manufactured for you?
Yeah, there isn't one part of that is bought and then.
So it's not somebody else's shock private label?
No.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm asking the question because I don't know, and I look at it and I think off the top like, he probably has that made by some. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, no,
but it's also
it'd be cheaper.
It's way it is way cheaper, but it's also the part where you can't control how it works.
This is the part that sort of is interesting with that one. So that shock got released. The first version of it was released on the 49 when it came to Vauxhall in 2019, and it took another 12 months before we were willing to sell the shock because it went through another 5 prototypes, and it actually started as a if you look between the bay window version, the Type 2 bus, and the Beetle Type 3 one, they're different in that the bottom of the bag, the rubber sleeve is actually tapered. Mm-hmm. And this was one of the tricky things to get around because we were trying to keep the ride quality there. And because the front end's so light, it's really easy to get a shock that will lift the front, but it'd just be cripplingly hard on the front and it wouldn't be compliant. So you've got to have a really soft damping rate to be able to soak up the potholes and all. Right. And so the wheel's got to be able to jump down the hole and get back to where it was really fast. But equally, you don't want the shock to not be able to lift the whole weight of the car. So the design of that shock ended up being, it's a tapered sleeve with a rolled over base, and it actually has a very narrow section in the bottom 50 mil. And that's, if you imagine, it's like a V shape at the bottom where the rubber rolls onto the sleeve, and that's got very small surface area. So that's what actually creates the movement in the bag. So when you're going along and it's taking out we have like cat's eyes and holes and everything. That's
gigantic potholes here in the UK. I mean, gigantic. I mean, it might be the way my Uber driver's hitting them, but I mean, they're
doing it on
huge.
Purpose.
Yeah, they're big.
But that's the bit that actually does the suspension work. But the beauty of that part is that's there at all heights. So it's not just like you're getting just suspension when you've only got the tiniest pressure in, so like 20 PSI. It has that same amount at 110 PSI as it does at 20 PSI. And then the middle section, and this was different to the Monroe, the major difference. By having that steel piston more like a coilover, there's a huge volume of air above it. So when it lifts, it will lift the car consistently to the sort of same heights, even without a height sensitive system. So if you just put in 70 PSI, the height, even with you sitting in it, it will still go to the same height every time. So you don't get any of this like listing as it's going up or going down. So that was the big headache. And the other thing, the design that they ended up with, we added it's like a Heim joint, I think you call them, top and bottom, because with the narrow beams, you have to run the shock at a huge angle. So it has that, and it has anti-rattle. You see some little rubber O-rings in the side. Yeah. And then they are 1/4-inch air taps, so it's going straight onto most air managements. And then the rose joints are 12 mil, so straight onto a VW shock mount or beam bolt. So everything is literally straight fit. There's no like you have to put washers and adapters. So you don't got to fab
a bunch of stuff to make it work.
You can throw that on and it fits everything straight away.
So once you order it for, what's on the second page?
So if you type in, I'll just go.
What do I type in? There. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, we're working on working on the. I think the internet's on the same road that I drove here on.
So yeah, you've got the two pictures on the right there. So the middle one is the Beetle one you see at the bottom here. There's no crimp.
Right.
This one, the crimp in the foot on the next one.
Yeah.
So it's these cube. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that one's for the bus. So that one's got like 2/3 lifting capacity on top. So we actually deliberately had to turn down the lifting force on it for the Beetle and the gear to make it compliant, but still make it lift to consistent heights. So the 430 HD is purely for bus bay window.
And the HD like that will. So when you put that shock on a beam, do you leave the torsions in?
No.
So what do you do in place of the torsions? And then because I've seen people put straight rod through there.
Yeah. So
But there's straight rod just means both front are turning with no resistance. It's just now a hinge point.
Yeah. So there's the original through rod is the sort of term we use to describe them, was just a long piece of studding, and they just put washers on.
Right. We call it all thread in the States. That was the ghetto way of slamming your car. You just take a hammer, and you knock out all the top leaves.
Yeah.
You put a piece of all thread through there.
And lots of nuts.
Yeah, nut each side, and you're good to go.
The Bible on the dashboard.
Right, that's it. You pray. Have a prayer before every road trip, and so now what do you guys? So somebody buys that. If someone buys this air shock, this air shock from you, can they fit that to a standard beam and raise and lower the car?
They can, but we tend to say, because you're fighting the torsion leaves, so we do these through bars, but ours are like a solid steel bar with a machine pin with a roller on the end.
Right.
So they lock into the center adjuster or fixed point, but you can use a factory beam. So you can still do it that way.
So in other words, if somebody wants to do the least expensive method of lowering, they can get a set of front air shocks from you, and get the other pieces,
the through bars,
the through bars on your website too.
Yeah, the only thing they would have to do in that case is they just have to do a little bit of fabrication to make that top mount fit, because that's the bit where you've got the pressed steel tower, and that's where back to the
so on a
early
stock tower, it's not going to work.
It's tricky. Yeah.
Because the stock tower's got the big bulge.
Yeah, it's like 1.25 inches thickness to the pressing. So so you'd end up chafing on the bag, and that's why on ours we have the laser cut end plates, and then with the like gusset for the strength on the front.
So you
edge.
Make those shocks 100% in-house.
100%. Yeah.
Wow. And what's the duty cycle on those things? I mean, so far you haven't had too many failures with those bags?
No. I mean, there's been I'd say how many out there now? Probably in the region of 400 pairs of between those two out there.
And those are just front only?
Yeah.
So you don't want to use those on the rear?
No. People have tried to do them on the rear, but again, it requires quite a lot of extra sort of fabrication. And the damping rate, because it's so soft, is designed for that 300 kilogram sort of front axle, 3 to 450. The damping rate for the back isn't ideal. So you would end up with the back rolling. So you want it, the stiffer setup we do with the Revolution kit for the back is a much stiffer gas shock and a much larger bag it's lifting the gearbox and the engine at the end of the day
so
the rear.
Your attitude is like, just get the airbags for the rear. So you can do, like on that Ghia that was down there.
Yeah.
It has these on the front.
Yeah.
With a Type 1 adapter beam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then it's got bags in the back.
Correct.
And you make kind of that cradle design that goes over the shock tower.
Yeah.
Now that's gone through a couple iterations. I know my brother had a setup on a car.
Yeah.
And he had over time from the customer using it, because the bag was kind of accordioning in the bag a little bit.
Yeah.
It ended up tweaking.
Yeah. So we do the original Gen 1 kit. So the Revolution kit was the one that sort of followed the first gen is a fixed lower plate and fixed upper plate. And there was things that could be improved. And the main one on it was that we added the ability for it to sort of be cross compatible. So that was making it work for Type 3, Beetle, Ghia, all years, early chassis, late chassis, split case transmissions, short axle, long axle, IRS. There's so many different variations of what people do.
Variations and weights and all that stuff.
Yeah, so. And this system is an entirely self-contained, self-limited construction. It's entirely unique to kind of
Now,
how we've done it.
Is it a problem with the bags, like accordioning and like that, like on an angle?
No. So the main parameter they give you on the specs for building bag kits is that at full compression you should have no chafe. So the bag should be, when flat, when as low as it'll go, they should be completely perfectly parallel over the top of each other. It opening up like that, as it, like you said, an accordion style. The bag obviously over a long period will eventually mold slightly to that shape, but in terms of its lifting force and how it's held, they have like a webbing that holds them on the side that keeps the bag in form. And
So the bag, because it looks like the bag is kind of squatting to the side, but is it still pushing up and it can't blow out to the side?
No. That's perfectly in spec. Because you think on any of the, if you put that just on a standard swing arm, and you put that bag, it's still accordion because there's pivot points here and the top fixed plate. So it's still doing,
instead of like,
it's not moving parallel.
Instead of like replacing the shock with an airbag.
Yeah.
And most cars have a coil around the shock, and the shock rides inside, and everything runs straight up and down.
Yeah.
With the Volkswagen, you're limited on space inside the suspension, and then that's quite a setup in the rear, and that will take, let's say on that Ghia, how high will that Ghia sit out there?
Well, this is the interesting thing, because it's a push rod system, really, is how it's working. So
it works on a cantilevered rod.
Yeah.
So where does the rod go?
So the rod, you see the little holes, the ones with the red stickers on, are the push rods.
Yeah.
And the little hoop on the end is where it actually pushes. Oh.
Let me see here.
So yeah, you can see this out, just the top there.
Yeah, I clicked on the.
So yeah, those rods.
Oh, so it connects to here, to this spot here. That's where the push rod bolts to, is right there?
Yeah.
So it connects to there and connects to the
shock mount,
the lower shock tower. So you're actually articulating the suspension from the lower shock mount.
Yeah.
And what you've done is cantilevered the bar to go down there, and the bag is operating the bar.
Yeah.
So it's like an inboard shock system, just using a bag instead of a shock.
Yeah, and then it has a horizontal shock across the top. Mm-hmm. So that provides the damping that's sort of hidden within the two halves of the cradle.
So there's a shock inside here?
Yep. That runs horizontally, yeah. Because otherwise you wouldn't have any damping. You'd just have a bag. So then it'd be bouncy.
Then it'd be bouncy and all that.
Yeah, and you get all that. So it's again, that was another nightmare to make, because the seals you have to put in a horizontal shock isn't the same as a vertical shock. You've got gravity as your friend with the vertical stuff. But that one has to have all kinds of additional seals along the length of it to keep because it's a gas shock.
So that gas shock is proprietary to you?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So that we call that as a HGS 309, that one is, for this horizontal gas shock, 309 extended. And then all you see, all our other range is GS, a gas shock. And they're for like the static stuff.
So you put a horizontal shock on a vertical application, it's not going to work the same.
The horizontal on the vertical probably okay.
Because all the gravity is going to bring all the fluid down to the bottom. Is that what the issue is?
And they run dry on the top side.
Right.
Yeah.
So then it'll blow out after a while if there's no lubricant on it.
Yeah. It's the same as like why you never put your coils horizontal, because you have the plates in the top and then all the oil drains to the bottom.
Right.
But they basically will burn out the top side of the seals, and then fluids and gas and all kinds of things will go wrong. But that's based around the company make that shock for us, do all sand rail stuff, and they do a lot of the inboard horizontal stuff. Yeah, to seek out.
So you kind of went to them and said, "I like what you make. I need it made this size, this small, and this is the rebound rate that I have on." Now, how are you calculating rebound and all that stuff? Or, I mean, have you done
a lot of calcs to try?
Well, that's what I'm figuring out.
But fundamentally, once it goes on there, it all looks really great on paper. We did all the maths based around the pivot point and where that is, because it's basically a bell crank idea of where that sits. But because they're dealing with that, and then the rod down to the arm, and then the arm pivots from the front point, the sort of leverage is like 3 lots of leverage going on between it. So
3 to 1, the leverage compound on that is.
Yeah. So we've fitted it and basically tried it, and that is harder than our normal gas shocks to be able to sort of
to handle that rebound.
Yeah.
Because so you're saying that the 3 points of force are putting down into that one rebound spot.
Yeah. But then you've got the bags obviously helping it there, but you've got to deal with the weight at the back of the car is much higher and can create much more sort of shock loading. So the shock that's got to deal with it has got to be a much higher pressure. So that's what they are on top of there. So
it looks like it looks like a pretty good system. And how many of these systems have you sold so far of these the rear bag setups?
There's probably around 400 of those now.
Of the rear bag setups.
Yeah.
Now, what's been your biggest challenge with manufacturing, becoming a parts manufacturer, going into the easy life of a parts manufacturer and like riches, and you probably take a nap in your vault of cash.
And then the yacht sometimes. Yeah, that's it.
So I mean,
everything is horrible trying to do manufacturing. It's one day the machine will make thing one size, the next day another. Working in the UK as well is riddled with its own problems of rain and and then all the steel comes brown, and then you have to
all pitted,
and then you have to go through fights with tolerances of things. So it's the steel seems to come in different sizes every time we order.
Really?
So everything now we make a point of blueprinting pretty much everything we start with to get it right from day naught kind of thing. So but manufacturing is everyone who does it, I think,
and you thought
feels the pain.
where you're at now, I mean, you're kind of to the point where you're too late to turn back.
Yes.
And you've committed to this, so there's a sense of pride, like I will see this through.
Yes, yeah. It's all Leanne's fault. It's all Leanne's fault.
100%. We have to blame her. And with doing all of this, I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? It starts as a hobby, like this will be cool, and then I'll provide something for this group that I'm part of, and then when you become a manufacturer, you kind of cross a line, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're no longer Craig. Well, there's the guy from Limebug, right? Like, and you challenge sometimes with maybe. Because you sell a lot of stuff to DIYers, right?
Yes.
And so the problem is you have to take all of the thinking out of it when you sell it to them.
And that's one of the nice things about that. That's pre-assembled. So it takes a huge amount of the...
So it's no longer like, especially when you're selling stuff overseas, it's no longer like, well, how did you put it in? The guy sends you a picture and you're like, you put the wrong piece in the wrong place.
It does still happen. Like it got to be honest. And that's normally where the main hiccups end up with, or people sometimes, it's not even necessarily the customer. Sometimes they'll buy a car and it says this is this year, and then the chassis has been swapped out, or the transmission's been swapped, and then that creates then more hurdles because they've managed to get it so far, and then we have to break the news to them and go, unfortunately, that all needs to come back out because the tab is wrong or the rod is wrong.
Clearly, looking at your pan, I think you have a 68 pan and you're 62.
Yes.
So it's like, this is as much as we want this to work, it's never going to work.
Yeah.
What is it easier on the air systems? Is it easier to do swing axle car or IRS car?
In terms of the fitting, it's exactly the same. So. Unfortunately, the Beetle is actually the trickiest one to fit, purely because Type 3's boot floor is fractionally higher. So to get those two halves in, it's much easier on a Type 3. IRS makes no difference. The shock mount, we have like a little cup that drops into the top of that, and then the push rod just drops straight in. So that's great. The main difference in terms of difficulty actually comes to the Volkswagen, really. To make an IRS car lower, you can't get away from an angle grinder. You have to do some chopping.
So can you get a swing? You can get a swing lower than an IRS?
Easy, yeah. That car you've got on the picture there.
Yeah, I see. There's lots of Type 34s. For a guy who just wanted to argue about Type 34s not being the cleanest Volkswagen on the market, you got a lot of them on your website.
I know.
I'm not a black wheel guy. Look at this one with the black. It doesn't do the wheels justice.
Yeah. In the right light, yeah. But
that's the thing. Like,
they get a little bit lost to the tires sometimes.
And that's my challenge with black wheels is that you don't see the wheel tire separation.
But that car there has no cuts at all.
It's swing axle. Because I'm sitting here, I'm building another Type 34 right now, and I'm looking how hard this thing looks on this air suspension. And so could I use the front air shocks on a Type 3 beam on this?
This is the one with Type 3 because they have this funky...
Right, they got that torsion front suspension.
The answer in a nutshell is I don't think it'd work quite right. I think it has to be the conversion beam.
You never get it to work correctly.
Yeah. I think it'd be you'd be fighting the torsion bars.
Now, with respect to so this full kit you can buy, goes on, and it comes with the front beam, the whole gamut. The blue Type 34, you guys will see pictures that I'll include on the blog for this. The Type 34 Gi that was here yesterday, when that's driving, how high does it sit? How high can it sit?
I actually saw him leaving yesterday. I mean, I don't know how high it will go at max height because I've only seen it driving out, but it lifted a clear 4 or 5 inches of good clearance, from the floor. He drove out through all that mud and sludge and grass and everything out over there. But yeah, I've seen that video of that car on the freeway as well, driving along, and yeah, you'd get about 5 to 6 inches is kind of like where you're at.
Now, how much does the geometry change in respect to lowered to stock with regards to steering? Is the steering affected much?
No, the
height of the driving.
Yeah, so you're like bump steer, is that the kind of thing? So the Ultra Arm, that was one of the big things that was trying to cure, because you get that sort of crazy where you go over a bump and then one wheeler just jump massively out of line and make the whole car skip across the road. The Ultra Arm pretty much disposes of that as a problem, so you get almost zero bump steer, with the
so the Ultra Arm fixed that, just realigning all the,
because it pushes everything straighter. You're trying to get that you're chasing that
trying to get a straight line,
a straight rod, without having a solid, the Lotus way of having that solid bar from just one spindle to the other, because then it won't go round and roundabout at all. But that you're trying to get it where the rods are completely straight, so when you have got that articulation, you haven't got the wheels doing any kind of steering. You just want everything to go in a straight line, and that arm does basically rectify that. That was one of the things it was chasing, as well as the lock-to-lock thing as well on the Ackerman, but that gets rid of it.
Is your arm one of your better selling pieces? Just the arm by itself?
Yeah. I mean, Cage Chase sells them in the States as well, and again, we worked with him because he's the guy we always knew as the extended Pitman arm guy, and so we sort of spoke to him and had some conversations about that. We changed a few of the designs, like the big one was the long extension on that short rod, because that one's really off center now. When you look at it, it looks kind of bizarre a little bit, but that's all been I suppose worked out on a lot of SolidWorks and a lot of CAD, and then some cardboard and wooden models to try and figure.
I mean, you guys are having. I mean, it looks like on your website you guys have just a ton of stuff. Everything from, I mean, you've got spindles. You sell spindles too?
Yeah, fully built. Yeah. We do them in you raw, powder coated, or the complete with carriers, everything good to bolt on, or the whole front axle. So,
how many people do you have in your organization working with you?
We're quite small, really. There's only 4 of us that are full time, and then we have 4 other guys who are part time in the shop as well.
So, I mean, it looks like everything you've taken some time and put a lot of effort in engineering and trying to get this stuff dialed in. The wheels were the newest thing that you did?
Yeah. So the wheels are the fun bit.
Now, and so what inspired the wheels? It was just wanting to add another thing to the catalog, or just wanting to do something different?
I think it was wanting a wheel. I remember the FU30 being the Fuchs inspired wheel that was sort of machined up, and I wanted one where it was a 16, so quintessentially the correct size for a Fuchs original diameter wheel, but I wanted the center to be sunk on the back and then protruding into the king crab more idea at the front, and that was one want, I suppose, on the wish list. But the other one was the pedal. There's quite a few replica ones and splits, and
I gotta be honest, I hate the cut Fuchs design. It's a copy of the 1552s. Was the original?
Yeah.
That's the first one that I saw years back, which I loved. It's my image profile and OfferUp, and that's what I wanted to do 12, 13 years ago when I started building my split window, and I gotta tell you, I hate what everybody's doing with them. Like in the U.S., they're all just cutting them open.
Machining them.
It's just terrible. It's
Yeah.
it just does, just because it looked right when they did it doesn't mean like it looks. It's got to be flat on the face. You can't cut into the arc. Like it's You know what I mean? Like there's a way that people are doing it, and
I think because they're starting like a monoblock cast wheel that's starting with on those ones and machining out. You either end up with the wheel looking way too small and sort of lost in the middle, and we push the petals right out so it looks like with the tire on it, everything looks proportionally
right. Well, yeah,
balanced.
your pedal doesn't curve down.
No,
it's flat.
Yeah,
and when it's flat like that, you can machine it out if you want to machine it out.
Yeah, and then has the reversed hardware in the back, and then it sort of gave a. By machining it ourselves, it gave us a huge amount of scope to be able to play with it. And like this wheel here,
I love this wheel, man. This wheel is freaking. This wheel is rad. I mean, so is that a one-off wheel, or is that a wheel that you make?
Yeah, we make that. So that one's on our 63, but we've just done one that we're not allowed to talk too much about. But the guys at Type Two Detectives they're building a really cool bus with another. Play on that wheel, basically.
Right.
So we've just done those.
What's the name on that wheel? That star-shaped wheel?
They're called 6335. So they're hidden in there somewhere. But they're
so now you sell barrels. You sell the barrels too for everything.
Yeah, all the dishes and barrels. So you can build the wheel up to the spec that you want. If you want a huge wide, a 9-inch wide tire at the front, the back.
And these obviously you're distributing for somebody. You're buying them through a distributor.
Yeah, so
you don't manufacture those.
We don't manufacture the dishes and barrels. No, they're made through a process. Spinning is how they're made, and then we machine the drill and the drill holes, and then they just call it like the PCD because it's kind of like a lug pattern.
That wheel is freaking gangster, man. That wheel. Listen, there's some ugly wheels in the world. That's not one of them. I'm a fan of this wheel because it just has. It's got such a cool look to it, and that's not an easy thing to pull off with the Volkswagen. You're stuck at the wide 5 design, and you've got to come up with something that's. I mean, it's really
it's a bit of fun.
Everything is a pentastar shape, right?
Yeah.
Always is with a 5 lug. You can't do a 6 because it doesn't match up with the lug pattern.
It's lean into the star. That one is
right.
So the stars everywhere on that one.
Oh yeah, it's freaking rad, man. So what's a set of those wheels run?
I think on them by the time you've got the dishes, barrels, and hardware, you're probably around the sort of 3,000, maybe a whisker under 3,000 by the time you've got everything. It's the hardware that adds up on them. The dishes and barrels are just... That
doesn't sound super expensive. I mean, you get a set of Iozio wheels, the forged alloys, and those are $5,000 for a set. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
but then you obviously with them they come like straight off the machine, so there'll be a milled finish on them. So you would have to then paint, anodize, polish post that point.
So you sell the hub, and then with this wheel, it's like you buy this wheel and you pick your center cap.
Yeah.
You can go center cap or no center cap.
Yeah.
And
a lot of people like the industrial look of like still seeing the hub nut and still seeing the castle nut in the front as well, the pinch nut at the front as well. So a lot of people run them without a cap.
Now the Fuke style wheel right here, the Linebug 16-inch Fuke.
Mm-hmm.
Now these are like this is a flat 4 Fuke, which whatever. Some people need to buy it, so you sell it, right? But I mean, I really like the Linebug 16-inch.
Yeah. So so they're a lot of fun. They were like where they were done where the front wheel is entirely different to the rear. So on our machine, they don't share any fixture or any jig. The front wheel is entirely different wheels to the rear, even though they look similar. So it has that dished center. So the middle of that wheel is low, and then the front wheel is more like a traditional where the center is high. So you get that like concave, convex thing going on when you see them.
Is there a car here today with a set of these wheels on it?
I don't think there's one here today.
I really like the concave convex wheel, and here's the crazy part: where else can you get that in the VW world?
Yeah, they're all pretty much much of the same center section, just with different offsets and different barrels for all the other wheels.
This is a ton of work to try to figure out to get this to work. So is the front and rear wheel the same? Like when you order it, it'll say, do you want it rear? Do you want it concave, convex? Like,
yeah. So we've done a few of those for the Porsche community, and we've done, one guy's had a set for his 911, and he's just ordered the second set is not the concave convex. He's gone for the concave front and back this time.
Oh, really?
So, which is the more unique one, if you know, because that's like, you know, the one that's totally unique. But in general, if somebody was to order a set, they would get the front with the concave, and then they would get the rears as the convex. But they're all molded around the dish as well, which is so the front has a 1.5 inch dish. And that the profile of how that comes around, we have to add a lot more material on the back of that.
So to push the pedal out.
Yeah. And then on the back, the dish profile is different. So when you look at them when they're machined, you can, even from the back, you can identify which one is a rear and a front, because they're totally different, you know.
And on these, you start with a solid block of aluminum.
Yep.
So there's a ton of waste.
Yep. Yeah, the scrap man loves us.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, how long does it take to machine one of those centers?
So to do a full set of 4 wheels takes 1 week.
And you work with somebody who's got a 5-axis?
No, we have a 3-axis, and then we do have a 5-axis lathe, but we don't machine the wheels in the lathe.
So you machine these on a 3-axis?
Yeah.
On a 3-axis CNC?
Yeah, with a lot of headaches.
Yeah, that's work, man. And who programs all that?
Me and one of the other guys who's full time. He's good as well. So he does a lot of the programming, and we keep. It's a never ending thing with the machining. You're always chasing a better finish, chasing a smoother profile, and a cleaner cut. So, but yeah, every time we'll always try and tune it a little bit more each time. But yeah, he does all that stuff. So
no, that's
along with me.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, you got some good. So, what's new coming up for Limebug? Like, what could we expect to see in the future?
So this year, split screen air ride will happen this year. So the split bus and the bay bus. So the bay bus front kit's already done and out. The rear of the bay is due to go out imminently, and then actually as of Monday, tomorrow, the first prototype shocks should be pretty much ready to fit and take on a few pothole runs to see how they feel. So they were hoping to get them here for the show, but with everything else, it just unfortunately missed the boat a little bit. But they're the things that are coming out, and we've got some new 1302, 1303 or Super Beetle shocks as well.
So strut replacement type stuff.
Yeah, McPherson strut front end stuff. What else have we got? There's one really, really big project that won't be done this year, but it'll be for 2024, which is it involves a lot of carbon fiber. So that's quite an exciting one.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's rad. No, I like what you're doing. I mean, it just like the stuff that I see that you do out here, it looks like you've got a lot of time committed to it. And the stuff doesn't look like it's cheaply built. You know, it looks like it's quality stuff. I mean, I know anytime you're in a business, you're starting with things, you've got that kind of trial and error period where something worked when you guys had it in the workshop and something like that, and maybe you need to make some refinements after it goes out. But from the stuff that I've seen, man, that I see out here, it's pretty solid. So, and you're just now dipping into the bus world right now.
Correct. Yeah. So that's the next thing really, because the Beetle and Type 3 has been obviously from the name, that's been where we've started, and we've built with the car air-cooled Volkswagen world, and we just want to try and see what we can do with the bus stuff, because it doesn't seem a lot out there for the bus air kind of thing.
Yeah, but you got to wait on it a little bit.
Yeah,
you know.
And
that's the thing. You know, when you're running a small operation, it's like you've got quite a menu here, and that means you've got a lot of product to try to supply. I mean, which means you've got a lot of hours to build inventory.
Yeah,
you know. So what's typical wait time? Somebody orders I call you up and I say, Craig, it's your boy Bill from the States. I'm going full air on the Gia, bro. What do I need? How soon do I get it?
For you? So typically, you're talking 2 weeks.
So 2 weeks, but it'll ship in 2 weeks.
You would get it in 2 weeks.
Do you make them to order, or do you have them in inventory? You try to inventory everything?
Yeah, so everything's carried. So we roughly, with the beams, because 4-inch is the most popular. We normally carry in the region of 200 of those at any one time, and then the Type 3 stuff, they're a lot less. But most of the time we've got a buffer. But it always falls over. It sounds like. Well, it always falls over because of one little bracket or one little screw or one clip or one pipe, and because there's so many components to it, it only takes that one thing, and then you can't ship it out. So, but generally speaking, we've got. I mean, like we had one. We ordered for a Type 3 rear kit on Wednesday, and he has the kit already. So that's.
Oh, nice. And where do you sell most of your stuff?
States.
The States has just been killing the UK as far as sales go.
The States do like the stuff, yeah. So it's like,
where do you send most of your stuff to? Southern California, or do you send it all over?
Yeah, there's a lot of dry states seem to have it, but Texas seems to have it. Hawaii, weirdly, a lot goes to Hawaii.
Yeah. Well, all those guys, they got all that money and no roads to drive on, so they just
they could
build cars.
They could just drive around in circles all day on the
Yeah, it's crazy. Maui's got a lot of EWs out there and not a lot of roads. But
but we send a lot of stuff goes to Europe as well. I mean, the UK is obviously still that's where we built up the reputation in the first place. Most well known here.
And all the stuff's made here in England.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
It's it's good to know that at least it's not going overseas to be made, and we're at least. It's being made in the country of origin where it's sold from.
Exactly.
Listen, that's got to be worth something, right?
Exactly.
So, well, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
The website, the email. The emails are always best. So yeah, just jump on there. There's a contact us page, or just direct to vwparts@linebug.com. And then
very cool. And your Instagram is Linebug
VW.
Linebug VW. You guys want to check out his stuff, Linebug VW, and Craig's making some dope stuff, and if you saw his Type 34 Ghia, you'd be mad as I was today. So, well, thanks for coming on the podcast, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right.
If you like that podcast, make sure you share this with a friend. We love when you share the podcast because it helps us grow organically, and we've been growing like crazy because you guys have been out there like nobody else sharing the podcast. So I appreciate that from me to you guys. It makes doing what I do that much better when I see you guys enjoy it enough to share it. So don't forget, One Crazy Weekend, October 6th and 7th. Go pre-register right now at letstalkdubs.com. It's going to be a rager. So there's going to be some people from London over here. Some people from the UK in general will be here for that event. So it'd be cool. You get to meet some of the people you heard of on the podcast. It's going to be a great time. Lots of people from all over different locations are going to be coming to One Crazy Weekend. So look forward to seeing you guys there. Don't forget to support letstalkdubs.com. You can go on pick up some merch. We'll get you guys some merch shipped out with the quickness. Other than that, guys, I've got more stuff coming up from the UK Invasion, plus some other podcasts and one stateside podcast that I did in the UK. But that's a great one. It's going to be coming up as well. Until next week, guys. Later.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen.